King Jr., a leader of the American Civil Rights Movement, is recognized as one of the truly great men of the 20th century. King had a lifelong spiritual kinship with Unitarian Universalism, formed during his graduate student days in Boston. In 1966, he gave the UUA's Ware Lecture, in which he said, "There are those moments in life when you speak before a group that is so near and dear to you, you don't feel like you're in the midst of strangers. You know you are with friends." As the head of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, King was also among friends in organizing and leading peaceful protests and acts of civil disobedience. On this day, February 28th, in 1968, King was engaged in planning a peaceful protest for the spring of that year, one that would be called the Poor People's Campaign. He wanted to bring poor people to Washington, D.C., forcing politicians to see them and think about their needs. He said, "We ought to come in mule carts, in old trucks, any kind of transportation we can get our hands on. People ought to come to Washington, sit down if necessary, in the middle of the street and say, 'We are here. We are poor. We don't have any money. You have made us this way, and we've come to stay until you do something about it.'" He saw this as no mere one-day march in Washington, but he saw, in his words, suffering, outraged citizens who would go and stay until some definite and positive action is taken to provide jobs and income for the poor. The campaign had been announced earlier on December 4th, 1967, and planning was in full swing. King toured a number of cities and towns to raise support for the campaign. One was Marks, Mississippi, where he watched a teacher feeding school children their lunch, consisting of only a slice of apple and some crackers. He was moved to tears. He wanted the Poor People's Campaign to start in Marks because of the intense and visible economic disparity that he had seen there. Throughout May, 9 major caravans of poor people gathered and prepared to converge on Washington. Caravans originated in Selma, Alabama, as well as Los Angeles, Seattle, and San Francisco. Most media attention was focused on the caravan called Mule Train, which departed on May 13th from Marks, Mississippi. It was the last to leave for Washington, and as King had wished, it signified the campaign had started. On May 21st, the campaign set up a 3,000-person protest camp on the Washington Mall known as Resurrection City. The camp stayed there for 6 weeks. Yes, on this day in 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King was planning a peaceful springtime protest. But it was one he would not live to see. On April 4th, he was killed by an assassin's bullet at the age of 39.
Welcome to everyone. Can you see me, hear me? I am happy you have joined our service today. I am Pat Hurst, a member of the worship committee of UU Catskills. Our minister is the Reverend Dr. Leonisi Artizzoni. The video on this day, February the 28th, that you just saw, supports the theme of our service today, which is Martin Luther King and the Poor People's Campaign of 1968 and today. The reader on the video was Christy Bellici. Christy is the chair of our caring team. We are a welcoming congregation here at UU Catskills. We welcome friends, guests, and members to our online service. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome here. If you are a visitor and would like to be added to our mailing list and receive the monthly newsletter, weekly updates, please add your name to the chat room. You can also email our office administrator, given on an upcoming slide. At UU Catskills, we affirm Black Lives Matter, and we are active voices in the effort to address climate change. We are a congregational affiliate of the Ulster Immigration Defense Network, Immigrant Defense Network, and we are a welcoming congregation for the LGBTQ community. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religious faith that carries no creed and welcomes all seekers. We are guided by 7 principles and 6 sources that encompass the many ways that we come to know and understand the world, the universe, and the divine. If you are new, we encourage you to visit our website at uucatskills.org. I have a few announcements. Our community circles meet about every month, and there are 5 circles, and we're geographically defined. So soon the circles will be planning to meet outside. So be sure you stay in touch with your circles. The primary contact information for our congregation is given here. The board, the minister, worship committee, caring team, administrator, that would be the office administrator, and Reverend Leonisa's appointment books. So you can schedule an appointment with her. Be sure and read our latest newsletter for the activities that Reverend Leonisa and others in our congregations will hold during the coming month of March. The newsletter is on our uucatskills.org website. It's hard to believe that March is already here, and maybe, just maybe, winter weather is coming to a close. The March issue should be available to you today or tomorrow. You will find various thoughts and reports by our board president and other members of our congregation. The calendar events is full of happenings during the coming week. I will point out a few of these. The first one is today, this afternoon at 3 p.m. We have the New York UU Justice Network on Zoom. At 7 p.m. we have the Grief Support Group. On Monday at 5, we have the group called Buddha Cats. And Tuesday, 7:30, there's a group of us that is reading a racial healing handbook. And we get together on Tuesday to discuss certain chapters. On Friday in the morning at 9:30, there's Kundalini Yoga. And Sunday, next week, we will kick off our annual pledge drive. That's a very important thing for us at the Catskills financially, so we can plan our budget for next year, which will start soon. Our treasurer, Carla, will be very busy, and she would appreciate your pledge being made early. Last, but very important to some of us, is a notice about the COVID vaccine availability. I just had mine Friday. A lot of my friends have had theirs, but there's still a lot of people that have not been able to get an appointment. So we have access to an individual that's very successful at doing that. And if you will go to chat and put your name, if you're a member in our directory, your name is all that's needed. We can look up your phone number. If you're not sure, then add your phone number or email to that. After the service today, we invite you to stay and join one of our breakout rooms, where we meet to have virtual coffee and conversation. Visitors are welcome. There will not be a breakout room for Children's Chapel today. I remind everyone that during the service, you are encouraged to stay muted. So welcome to UU Catskills. Let us now join together in creating a sacred space, a special time and place, so that we can have our worship together. I want to welcome our guest minister, Julio Torres. He was with us last month, you'll remember him. And today he will be leading off, introducing our prelude. Julio.
Hi, everybody. The prelude today is titled Inner City Blues, sung by Melody Angel, who you could find on Instagram or YouTube. It's a cover of a song originally recorded by Marvin Gaye, and I think it's one of the most powerful songs I have seen in mainstream media that discusses poverty. And I hope you all enjoy it. I believe Melody's a powerful singer, so please take it away. Are we playing the song? I can't hear it.
No, I think it's taking Tom a few minutes to get to it. It's on YouTube.
Oh, no worries. No worries. Just checking.
Yes.
Rockets, moonshots, spend it on the have-nots. Money, we make it before we see it. You take it. Oh, Maisie won't holler the way they do my life. Maisie won't holler the way they do my life. This ain't living, this ain't living. No, no, baby, this ain't living. No, 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 no. Inflation, no chance to increase finance. Bills pile up, sky high. Send that boy off to die. Oh, Maisie would holler the way they do my life. Maisie would holler the way they do my life. This ain't living, this ain't living. No, no, baby, this ain't living. No, 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 no. Hang-ups, letdowns, bad breaks, setbacks. Natural fact is, oh honey, I can't pay my taxes. Oh, makes me wanna holler, throw up both my hands. Yeah, makes me wanna holler, throw up both my hands. Crime is increasing, trigger habit, policing. Panic is spreading, God knows where we're headed. Oh, Maisie won't holler the way they do my life. Maisie won't holler the way they do my life. Oh, Maisie won't holler. Oh, Maisie won't holler the way they do my life. Yeah.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please press the subscribe button and the little notification bell.
Oh, thank you, Julio. That was nice to start this service with. If you have a chalice there at home, let's light it together. And you can say the song, the words rather, along with the children in the video.
We light this chalice in grateful, loving community.
Even in the darkest of times,
its flame like paths
to courage, justice, and hope.
Join me now in our affirmation together. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love to all living beings. May we know once again that we are not isolated, but connected in wonder and joy to mystery and miracle in the universe, in this community, and in each other. Julio will now give our opening words.
So good morning again, everyone. The topic of the month, beloved community, is core to my faith. It's core to my ministry, and therefore core to my being. And when I felt that calling to be a minister, it was through the inspiration of Martin Luther King Jr. And this was before I knew about his work with the Poor People's Campaign. It was in 2005 when I was in seminary that I had an internship with the Cairo Center, the Center for Religion, Rights, and Social Justice, whose two co-directors were Liz Harris and Larry Cox. And Liz became co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, and Larry was co-director, or was a director in the late 80s, early 90s of Amnesty International. And to be honest, if I didn't have that year of experience, I don't think I would have continued as a minister. I had once thought to be a chaplain in the Army, but again, this was 2015. So the following year, 2016, that election, it was a sign I needed to leave the military. And I felt the calling to help make the beloved community manifest. And it is, in my opinion, the ultimate manifestation of our principles, our values, and everything we hold sacred. So we can just go back one slide real quick, please. So that was me talking at UUA, the General Assembly, 2017. The Statement of Conscience addressed poverty, economic inequality. I spoke on militarism because it did not address the amount of money spent on war. If you could go back, if you go forward one, thank you. On the left, you'll see Reverend Dr. Barber. That was a picture from 2015 when he was, after one annual protest right around Valentine's Day, the historic Thousands on Jones Street protest. He was giving us all a bit of a lesson on moral fusion organizing. On the top, you see Larry Cox. We were in Flint. We were in Detroit, Michigan, discussing water rights. And then on the bottom right was in 2018 in Connecticut, when the Poor People's Campaign has started their state related work. So later, I'll show a picture of Liz when we were in Flint. But now, if y'all all like to join me in a hymn, the next hymn is Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen. And thank you, Catherine, for performing this. Now is the time, not for children only. And this story will be another YouTube, read by Matt Chizever, and it is called Click, Clack, Moo, Cows That Type. This is a wonderful children's story, I would say, about community organizing and fighting for justice. And I hope you all enjoy it as much as I did.
Click, clack, moo. Cows that type. Farmer Brown has a problem. His cows like to type. All day long he hears click, clack, moo. Click, clack, moo. Clickety, clack. At first, he couldn't believe his ears. Cows that type, impossible. Click, clack, moo. Click, clack, moo. Clickety, clack, moo. Then, he couldn't believe his eyes. Dear Farmer Brown, the barn is very cold at night. We'd like some electric blankets. Sincerely, the cows. It was bad enough the cows had found the old typewriter in the barn. Now they wanted electric blankets. No way, said Farmer Brown. No electric blankets. So, the cows went on strike. They left a note on the barn door. Sorry, we're closed. No milk today. No milk today, cried Farmer Brown. In the background, he heard the cows busy at work. Click, clack, moo. Click, clack, moo. Clickety, clack. The next day, he got another note. Dear Farmer Brown, the hens are cold too. They'd like electric blankets. Sincerely, the cows. The cows were growing impatient with the farmer. They left a new note on the barn door. Closed. No milk, no eggs. No eggs, cried Farmer Brown. In the background, he heard them. Click, clack, moo. Click, clack, moo. Clickety, clack, moo. Cows that type. Hens on strike? Who ever heard of such a thing? How can I run a farm with no milk and no eggs? Farmer Brown was furious. Farmer Brown got out his own typewriter. Dear cows and hens, there will be no electric blankets. You are cows and hens. I demand milk and eggs. Sincerely, Farmer Brown. Duck was a neutral party, so he brought the ultimatum to the cows. The cows held an emergency meeting. All the animals gathered around the barn to snoop, but none of them could understand moo. All night long, Farmer Brown waited for an answer. Duck knocked on the door early the next morning. He handed Farmer Brown a note. Dear Farmer Brown, we will exchange our typewriter for electric blankets. Leave them outside the barn door, and we will send Duck over with the typewriter. Sincerely, the cows. Farmer Brown decided this was a good deal. He left the blankets next to the barn door and waited for Duck to come with the typewriter. The next morning, he got a note. Dear Farmer Brown, the pond is quite boring. We'd like a diving board. Sincerely, the Ducks. Click-clack, quack. Click-clack, quack. Clickety-clack, quack. Thanks for listening. Tune in again next week for a brand new story.
I hope y'all enjoyed that as much as I did. But now is the time in our service for meditation. So I would ask that you all sit back and relax. Take a break. It's a nice Sunday morning. And start to breathe deeply in and out. About 5 seconds if you can. And just keep on that pattern of deep breathing as best as you can. And if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. And imagine yourself strolling down the streets of New York, hanging out with you, Reverend Dr. King. You're both strolling down. It's a beautiful spring day. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's sunny. You're strolling, you're joking, you're laughing, you're walking. Time goes on, you decide to get a snack. Nice donut shop, a bakery, a cafe. You pick up a snack. You're hanging outside. And you're smiling. You're both laughing about how there has been homeless people in years because everyone has a home. You're both enjoying the flavor because there's no hungry people because everyone has food. You're enjoying your drinks. You had a couple extra, as a matter of fact, because no one was living paycheck to paycheck. We all had living wages and pensions. You give a nice high five and a hug to Dr. King. You're not worried about anyone going to the hospital because there's free health care. You're having wonderful intellectual conversation, discussing philosophy, theology, and all things under the sun. Doesn't matter if you hadn't read any of the books, because we all had a free education. And both of you were envisioning what else could be done to make the beloved community manifest. You're both smiling. You're both rejoicing. And what a sight it is to behold. What other conversations would you have with Reverend Dr. King? Like, take a minute of silence. Have that glorious conversation. Welcome back. And now is the time for the offering. Pat, if you would, please.
For our offering this month, our half plate goes to the Worker Justice Center of New York. Their mission is to pursue justice for those denied their human rights. Their focus is on agriculture and other low-wage workers. They provide legal representation, community empowerment, and advocacy for institutional change. You will see on the screen that there are several ways to contribute to UU Catskills for our plate this morning. You may donate by texting the 833-643-0430 number. You can also mail your donation to the office address. And you can, let's see, by going online to our uucatskills.org website. For our offertory this morning, we have a real treat, Constant Rudd. We haven't seen her in a while, and she's here to play and sing Love's Gonna Carry Us by Reverend Fred Small.
Yes, I'll have to say that it's very strange for me to be thinking about Reverend Fred Small, because he's always just been, since the early 1980s, a singer-songwriter, a wonderful singer-songwriter, and very successful. As Fred Small, I guess he was becoming a lawyer. I wasn't even aware that he was a lawyer then, but he was both a very active singer-songwriter with many recordings, and he had gone to law school. He became a lawyer, focused on always on environmental issues. And then at some point he decided to he went to Harvard Divinity School. He became a UU minister. He had his first appointment in, I guess, a smaller town in central Massachusetts. And then he was called to become the minister, the UU minister at a very prominent church, the First Parish Church in Cambridge, in Harvard Square, Cambridge, Mass. Then he stayed there for about 7 years, and he is currently the Minister for Climate Justice at the Arlington Street Church in Boston. And I wonder, and I think probably he was always at heart a UU, but I don't know when he officially became one. But the third verse of the song I'm about to sing, it seems like when he wrote this back in 1980 or 81, he was certainly a UU then, it seemed, and you'll see why. Love's Gonna Carry Us. It's been a long, hard time. It's gonna be a long, steep climb. No one's gonna change our minds about what we gotta do. And when the road gets rough, everybody's saying just give it up. All of our friends, sweet love's gonna carry us through. We don't have the money, but we got the will. We got voices talking the truth that can never be still. But they're gonna threaten. You know, they have killed to get their way. But this movement we are building will not go away. It's been a long, hard time. It's gonna be a long, steep climb. No one's gonna change our minds about what we gotta do. And when the road gets rough, everybody's saying just give it up. all of our friends, sweet love gonna carry us through. Beware of the heroes, beware of the stars, 'cause our victory is hollow if it ain't really ours. We're talking about changes, not just changing the faces at the top. They say that freedom is a constant struggle, but you can't ever stop. It's been a long, hard time. It's gonna be a long, steep climb, but no one's gonna change our minds about what we gotta do. And when the road gets rough, everybody stay and just give it up. All of our friends, love's gonna carry us through. Now we're gonna argue. We don't always agree, but we can't let anger blind us to all we can be. 'Cause we need the laughter, and we need the tears to wash us clean. We need sisters and brothers beside us to follow the dream. It's been a long, hard time. It's gonna be a long, steep climb. No one's gonna change our minds about what we gotta do. And when the road gets rough, everybody stay and just give it up. All of our friends, sweet love gonna carry us through. All of our friends, sweet love, it's gonna carry us through.
Thank you, Constance. I would like to read I would like to read an excerpt from Beyond Vietnam by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. This was written in April of 1967, 1 year before his assassination. It was chosen by Julio for this service. I want you to think about two questions as I read this excerpt. This was written over 50 years ago. Listen to these words and ask yourself, do these words sound like they were written for today? Why hasn't our country changed? This is the excerpt. Our nation has taken the role of those who make peaceful revolution impossible by refusing to give up the privileges and the pleasures that come from the immense profits of overseas investments. I am convinced that if we are able to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin the shift from a third-oriented society to a person-oriented society, when machines and computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people. The giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. A true revolution of values will soon cause us to question the fairness and justice of many of our past and present policies. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. A true revolution of values will soon look uneasy on the glaring side of poverty and wealth. With righteous indignation, it will look across the seas and see individual capitalists of the West investing huge sums of money in Asia, Africa, and South America, only to take the profits out with no concern for the social betterment of the countries, and say, this is not just. It will look at our alliance and with the landed gentry of South America and say, this is not just. The Western arrogance of feeling that it has everything to teach others and nothing to learn from them is not just. A true revolution of values will lay hand on the world order and say of war, this way of settling differences is not just. Our only hope today lies in our ability to recapture the revolutionary spirit and go out into a sometimes hostile world, declaring eternal hostility to poverty, racism, and militarism. Julio will now give a homily on the beloved community through the lens of Martin Luther King and the Poor People's Campaign. Julio.
Thank you. Tom, if you could just show that slide real quick that you had on. Thanks. I just wanted to show this real quick because I think it's one of the most powerful moments in my life. But the picture on the left, you'll see in the center with the purple shirt and the white collar, that's Reverend Dr. Lyster Harris, one of the co-chairs of the Poor People's Campaign. She was a mentor, and I learned so much from her. And this was in 2015 in Flint, Michigan, when we was in the Midwest tour, seeing who would join the Poor People's Campaign. And the picture on the right is me speaking on behalf of About Face Veterans Against the War, discussing militarism at Washington, D.C., when we kickstarted the Poor People's Campaign in 2018. And again, you see Reverend Dr. Lyster Harris behind us talking in front of the Capitol. Thank you, Tom. So, like I said earlier, when I attended seminary, I had the good fortune of being an intern with the Cairo Center, the Center of Rights, Religion, and Social Justice. I had various roles, and I loved that experience. And they gave me a profound look at the Bible, something which I did not think possible after growing up Catholic and rejecting Catholicism. And they taught me the virtue of social movements and how before social justice can be done, people must eradicate the belief that injustice can prevail or that it will always be an issue. I believe in the beloved community. It is that one thing I hold sacred. And the Cairo Center had worked for over a decade to start the new Poor People's Campaign. And the UUA already supports it, and we must all work to end poverty and build the beloved community. And Martin Luther King once said, to paraphrase, what's the point of being able to sit at a lunch counter if you can't afford a meal? He asked this question, why are poor whites and poor blacks fighting in the war in Vietnam to secure liberties denied to them in America? He believed to unify the poor across gender, race, and other lines of division would allow for a new and unsettling force for change. Yes, in America, but also the world. And there's so many lines of division that manipulate the poor in cruel ways. And he took inspiration from many sources, to include Unitarians, and also Gandhi, who said that poverty is the worst form of violence. Reverend Dr. King said that ending poverty is more than flipping a coin at a beggar. It requires change in values and system. But wouldn't it be nice if it was? I would personally go to the bank and give everyone quarters and just let your thumbs do the talking. Just flick them. Bam, live your principles. It's a bad joke. Work with me, people. Whew. All right. But if you haven't read his Beyond Vietnam speech, the sermon, which we had the excerpt earlier, thanks again, Pat, I would highly recommend having a good read through it. And the Poor People's Campaign nowadays, they've taken that sermon and they've taken it to a whole new level. They've branded themselves as the national call for moral revival. And their website, they have an analysis called The Souls of the Poor Folk, which is an excellent study material if you need to build your knowledge and awareness about various things. You know, get a nice book group around it, really study it. You know, the Poor People's Campaign, I met the great times. There was some parties, there was music, there was food, there was laughter. I mean, it's certainly my favorite part of community building and solidarity. After all, they call for a radical revolution of values. And if there's anything I learned from that movie, V for Vendetta, is that if there's a revolution without dancing, is not a revolution worth having. And the Poor People's Campaign are great at building relationships, connecting with people, and supporting the many struggles, you know, big, small, and then uniting them overall. And they remind people that the stories they have are so similar for so many people. They are not alone. And while there can be much to be done with the major analysis, there's so much work to be done on the micro, smaller scale that must be done by people who live there. And the leaders of that work, that must be the leaders in the struggle who are most affected. After all, it must be a leaderful movement to end poverty, not a single leader or leaderless. Because after all, the beloved community will balance individual and group recognition and yet stay unified. And the Poor People's Campaign, as Martin Luther King said, shows that poverty, racism, and militarism are interconnected. To name a few, those are the broad umbrellas. Racism is something in which, in modern times, is an American invention. But in many ways, it existed in ancient times. Taking, for example, Egypt, the word for human was Egyptian. Therefore, other nationalities or ethnicities were deemed inhuman. Racism strips away inherent worth and dignity. And the racism the Poor People's Campaign are addressing are systemic injustices. Things such as the emergency financial management laws of Detroit, voter suppression of communities of color, everything related to immigration and deportation, the tough on crime laws that results in the largest prison population on earth. Some countries don't even have as many people in American prisons. I mean, it's almost the population of Queens. And the militarism, don't get me started. It's the reason I left the Army. You know, I took a 180 degrees and about face on my views of nationalism. And I recognized the military budget that was spent since the war on terror started could have ended global poverty, plain and simple. And certainly any death in war is tragic. And too many have died and been displaced over the past 20 years. Contractors I knew made more money than your average soldier, and in some cases as much as generals. And the Department of Defense was responsible for emitting 72% of the U.S. government's total greenhouse gas emissions in 2016, but was not counted because they were all done overseas. The Poor People's Campaign reminds us that an injustice to one is an injustice to all, and we are all in one world. And how can we help if we choose to join? There's plenty of poverty in upstate New York, you know, towns, the suburbs, rural areas. Have we eradicated poverty in our minds, in our theology? Have we emotionally, empathically connected with all in the struggle? Have we built relationships? Have we heard testimony? Have we done our own analysis? Have we engaged with our community? One lesson is that the campaign has an intersectional analysis, that nothing happens in a vacuum. The leaders of it, the Reverend Doctors Barber and Thayer Harris, they represent some of the best of Christianity in terms of the message of equality, addressing the poor and injustice, the power of love in society, and the love we have for our neighbor, for each other. They know that injustices ignore the inherent worth and dignity of a person. I mean, in many ways, the Poor People's Campaign is almost like singing a ditty to Old MacDonald Had a Farm. You know, it's something that would go something like, the Poor People's Campaign recognize the struggle, E-I-E-I-O. We recognize your humanity, E-I-E-I-O. With a bit of justice here and a peace there, peace and justice, peace and justice, peace and justice everywhere. The Poor People's Campaign is powered by love, E-I-E-I-O. Okay, I'm a minister, not a songwriter, but I hope you enjoyed that. The beloved community. It requires political love. It requires societal love. It requires ultimately peace, abundance, and equality. And the system needs to change by those that are most impacted, but certainly everyone must be involved. Those most impacted must lead the movements as they hurt the most. And it won't be a trickle-down approach with the rich. It would be a grassroots approach led by the poor. I'd say the rich won't be involved, certainly. But it must be the poor that leads on poverty. People of color and indigenous must lead on racism, and those who suffer from war must lead on militarism. And that being said, we yourselves may not fall in this category. I may not fall in those categories, but you all and I must be leaders in our own ways. If you're not already a leader, there are many ways to be a leader. Being a leader and a prophet, like I see in each of us, requires us to do what we can within our limits. We can spread awareness and conversation. We can end poverty in our own minds. We can learn and hear testimony from each other, from our neighbors. We can be active in any struggle which can cut across lines of division for a better quality of life for all. We can do research. We can sing. We can dance. We can paint, any art form. We can pray. We can reflect. We can simply be present. Anything is better than nothing when it comes to building the beloved community. And it's one of those things, I personally invested in it. When the Cairo Center asked me why I was interested in poverty, I said is that when I was on annual leave from my deployment in Iraq, I came back to New York City and I saw the homelessness as with new eyes. I did not appreciate that the war on terror, primarily against the Middle East, was racist, Islamophobic, and solved nothing. The resources I saw used in my small part of the world in my year of deployment could have ended homelessness in New York City then and there. And it could have kickstarted the beloved community. I can only imagine if we started back in 1968. Thank you all for listening. And now, just briefly, wanted to share something in the chat real quick. And you could always message me if you need them again. But the Cairo Center, Poor People's Campaign, and all have websites, Twitter, Instagram. And you can see for example, the Cairo Center, let me see if it pastes on the chat. I don't know if it will do a good job or not, but right, there it is. So again, Cairo Center _ on Twitter. Instagram is just a period in between. At Unite the Poor for the national movement. New York State has a movement. There's some upcoming events in the national and the state. There's both March 1st on Moral Monday, hashtag. Moral Monday was something Reverend Dr. Barber started in North Carolina. and they're going to uplift various struggles across the country. That's at 3 p.m. on March 1st. But again, follow the social media for more upcoming events. And also in New York State at noon on Monday, they're having Invest in Our New York and Fund Healthcare for the People. If you could join that, by all means. If not, there's plenty of things going on. And if a further study on the Cairo Center website, you'll see Beyond Vietnam transcription, various study material to include the Poor Folk, a moral audit, the moral agenda based on fundamental rights, the moral budget, and the Jubilee platform. So a lot of stuff. Like I said, I have a whole suite of links, et cetera, if you want. So please do research if you don't already know it all. But now is the time for the next hymn. So this is Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around. And this video will be of a gospel choir. And this is a protest song, Black spiritual. And I hope you all enjoy it. So closing words, my forever bar from Reverend John Tadeo. As the storm blows over, the sun recovers its position of strength, and that glorious symbol of hope and unity emerges across the sky. At the end of the rainbow, a treasure, the three things you must do. You go outside yourself and know the needs of the world. You go within and you discover your life-giving gifts. And then you arch yourself like a rainbow and you bridge across between the two and you create a more beautiful world. And now, if we can do our chalice extinguishing, please. As members of UU Catskills, may we listen respectfully and fully, honoring our covenant and community. May we offer support, time, compassion, humor, and trust. May we be mindful of our intent and impact, taking responsibility for our words and actions. May we endeavor to grow spiritually, ever open to change so that our UU principles may come to life. May it be so.
Thank you, Julio. Our red benediction is new to our congregation. Reverend Leonisa constructed it from our principles, and I thought it was beautifully read today. I hope you liked it. I want to thank the Reverend Julio Torres to be with us today. And his important message was one that we should all take to heart and remember and make it part of our lives to do something about. I want to thank Catherine and Constance for their beautiful music today. And I want to thank our technical host, Tom Hackett, for his diligence in bringing this. We look forward to having you back next month, Julio. So now we'll go to our breakout rooms. You're invited to stay, and in a few minutes, you'll be automatically assigned to a breakout room. Visitors are welcome to come and meet members of our congregation. It will take a few minutes, so be patient. I hope you all have a good week.